Okay, thank you very much. I'm sitting here watching it tick down, right? I got about 30 seconds.
Yeah, John, before you start talking, we'll make sure Molly hits record.
Okay. I believe that
It's
we're recording now, right, Molly?
Yes, recording is on.
Okay, I'll try to watch my language. If any of you have ever been on a presentation with me, you know it's a pretty heavy lift for me to do that. So welcome to Informative Friday, that little pun on words there. So we do these on a Friday. We have a series of these. We'll talk more about what's coming up. I do have some fellow Bells uh, presenters here are people who will be discussing things. We have Dave Thomas, who is our Vice President of Marketing and Sales, who also takes a hand and a lead a lot of times with you guys as you're trying to figure out your path moving forward. We also have Molly Velasco, who works in our client services department as well. And then Elizabeth Wilkerson, Liz Wilkerson, she's going to be monitoring your questions. So as we go through the presentation, if you have any questions, raise your hand. And then we'll get those questions answered. We have a lot to unwrap today. We're going to give you the latest and greatest. So thank you for joining us. I'm going to turn it over to Dave Thomas to do a little bit about, if you have never come into contact with Bells, this is the first time joining us for an informative Friday session, then Dave's going to tell you a little bit more about Bells and who we are.
Thanks, John. Hi, everybody. Thanks for attending the call today. We really appreciate it. Again, my name is Dave Thomas, Vice President of Sales and Marketing for Bales. Bales has been in the Infor ecosystem for over 26 years. We're entirely Infor focused, and we do nothing but Infor implementations, upgrades, and managed services. We support all aspects of the technology, including the S3, Landmark, and Cloud Suite products, along with the HCM, finance, and supply chain applications. In fact, we've been recognized and given partnering awards in 8 out of the last 10 years. Our consultants bring 15 plus years of consulting experience in the Infor Lawson space with the equivalent of professional experience. Some were former benefits managers, compensation managers, directors of supply chain, as well as controllers and CFOs. Recently, we were recognized by KLAS as top in class, and what that means is that the KLAS was a ranking firm out in the healthcare space, and they reached out to our customers and did some surveys, and we came back as one of the top implementers for Infor implementations in the ecosystem. We're real excited about that. Real exciting, another news bit that's exciting about Bales that's come out recently is that we've been acquired by a company called Nordic Consulting. Nordic is an industry-leading healthcare consulting firm. Will operate as a wholly owned subsidiary of Nordic and will be continued to be led by Jamie Bales as president. Nordic will provide us with resources to fund our growth, expand our business, and support our customers more effectively. For healthcare customers, it allows us to bring together the Nordic capabilities in the EHR space to provide a more holistic solution, including specific expertise in EHR and ERP integration. This combination will offer a best practices model to reduce implementation risk, leverage the data from both systems, and drive insights and outcomes. Thank you for attending, and I'll turn it back over to John.
Yeah, Dave, I'm really excited about the Nordic partnership that we have now because I grew up. If any of you have been in any of my presentations, you know you've heard me say that I grew up in the healthcare arena. I have around 30 years of experience in the healthcare arena. This is where you look at your screen and look at the video and say, "Boy, he looks really, really young." Even if it's not true, just flatter me just by thinking that. I'm going to draw on that energy. So with Nordic's experience leading Epic and other types of implementations in the hospital setting, I'm really excited to have them to be on board with them and to move forward. So they're moving in. So as we are aligning ourselves with that more with that healthcare Epic space, they are also aligning themselves with our space. And so I'm going to talk, which is Infor, and that's what you're here to learn about today. well, a part of Infor. Our discussion is going to be around the configuration console utility tool. And we're going to talk about the new configuration console. This is going, maybe for many of you, you've already heard about the configuration console utility. I'm actually going to start referring to it as a module, because today, when you see what I have to show you, you're going to agree that the utility has now been developed into a completely brand new module with a lot more offering. I'm really excited about that. We're also going to talk about landmark pattern language, how you can come up to speed on landmark pattern language if you've ever wanted to do that. We're going to talk about what it is if you don't know what that is. It's kind of hard to come up to speed on something you may not know that you need to come up to speed on, right? And then there is a lot of questions, or there are a lot of questions out there in the arena of web services and REST calls. As we move forward in the integration into the Internet of Things and people having a different approach to interfacing into our organization, we are starting to see that movement away from flat file integrations and sending spreadsheets over. And so a lot of questions are out there around the web services and REST calls that come with delivered with the product. So we're going to be touching as much as we can on all of those topics. One of the things that you also know about me, if you've gone to my presentations, there is a time where I like to leave the PowerPoint slide deck and set it aside, and I actually like to go into the application itself. And so bear with me as I get through a couple of more slides, and we will actually do a live demonstration of the things that I want to talk to you about. But before I get there, I want to talk about some philosophical things. I want to talk about why this tool is important to you, why this topic is important to you. When Bell starts an implementation, one of the things that we're sure that as we go through the design and the implementation of that initial implementation, that discovery and design, we are sure that we listen to what your business requirements are. I am very adamant that I do that, because I believe that whatever solution that we put in place for you should not dictate to you how you do business. And a well-designed software, it enables the business requirements of an organization, and it doesn't dictate to you what your business requirements should be. You should not be forced or required to adopt a change in business practice due to the limitations of software. And we often have those conversations when we're looking at different pieces of software. And maybe you've had that experience previously if you're an S3 client, or maybe some of the earlier versions of what we now refer to as HR talent, rebranded from the human capital management, HCM. What we want to make sure that we do is that we're completely supporting the way that you want to do business, and not force you into acquisitioning a field and repurposing this screen or coming up with clever ways. We want to make sure that there's a tool out there that allows you to put those screens, those fields, that business practice in place that totally supports what you aim to do, right? And when you do that, you should not be burdened with the overhead of the difficult maintenance and change management processes that can come through with customizations. So as I talk about the configuration console as opposed to the customization console, I really want to drive home the point that the things that we're going to be talking about in the configuration console module or utility, they really are configurations. They are not customizations. And so the tool is meant, the configuration console utility or the configuration console module is intended to address those two principles. One, give you a way that your business requirements can be enabled, and also make sure that the change management process is not so burdensome to you that you are having difficulty managing when you do make these configurations. If you are a current client of and you use GHR, you are going to be very pleased with some of the change management things that I'm going to show you in the new configuration console tool. I am using it now at a client, and I absolutely love it. And this is the tool that I wanted back in that first initial implementation of configuration console in version 10 of Landmark. And so so yeah, it's going to be exciting. So if you don't know what the configuration console tool is, let me talk to this slide before let me see where I am. Let me talk to this slide so that you get a better idea, and then we'll get into the application itself and do that demonstration. The configuration console utility is a configuration versus a customization tool. Unlike Design Studio that you may have come into S3, where that's a true customization tool, or some of the other customizations that you've made via user exits in S3. Yeah, all of these words are they're slowly starting to fade away as I work more and more. I go back to the earlier S3 for those of you who are out there since 1997. Yeah, and it was a big pain that you make all these customizations and then you do the release update or you do the latest patches and it wipes all those away. So these are configurations to the system, just like any other configuration or feature that we would enable. It allows us to add new fields. New forms, which is a screen. So you need a new screen. You don't like the screens, right? You can create new screens if you want. You can create new actions. You don't like the delivered actions that come with the system, you can create it. You don't like the way that the delivered actions work, then we can tweak those. We can make them work the way that you want to. New business tables. So you need a custom table in order to capture this data. Maybe you're not too pleased with the amount of on the purchasing side, for example, the amount of vendor information that you can capture, or you need to capture another set of data that needs to reside in its own tables. You can actually use the configuration console tool to do that. And once again, you can use this tool to configure the delivered form. So there is as we get into the tool itself, you'll see that the tool is broken down into configure something new and configure something delivered. And so I have broken that out on the PowerPoint slide there. Okay. So that is what the tool does. And now we're going to I'm just going to escape out of my PowerPoint. I am going to bring up my my screen here. So what you see here now, and some of you may have been used to or are used to accessing the configuration console. I'm switching over to the administrator space for just a moment. Okay. If you are given a security role, and only those people who have a security role of configuration console access can they actually receive a menu item here that is called configuration console. If you are looking at this in the rich client, you would go to application configure, right? And so there's two new web service or web applications that's put out there. There's the configuration console application that I'm going to go into now. I'm going to let that load, and you're going to see the home page here, which is quite different from what we saw before, right? Where it was a lot different inside of the rich client for sure. And then we also, the other web application that we have is we have the security administrator, which I don't have loaded right here, but that would replace the security administrator too. The reason that I'm bringing it up in this context is while that's not the focus of this conversation today, please note that security is an extension of the configuration model, meaning that you don't customize security, you configure security. And there is a very similar looking dashboard for those people who may have access to the configuration, the ability to make configurations, add new fields, add new screens, and things of that nature, as opposed to a security administrator. It could be one or the same depending on your organization. But yeah, it is a different tool. So what you see here is the configuration console utility or the configuration console module. It does exist within its own space right here on the item. And when you first open it up, one of the first things that you notice is that all of the information that you need from the repository is right there at your fingertips. So I did use the word repository. What is the repository? For those of you who have been around for a while and had math class in the year that I had math classes, and you had that overhead projector and you had the laminate sheets, and the teacher would do the math problems on the overhead. Same way in biology class when you would be looking at some science figures, there would be overlays. That's exactly what the repository is. It houses all of the overlays, and that's how configuration console works. It does not change the base code that is delivered to the system. when you access a page or an item that has been configured, it actually goes and makes a call to the repository, and it pulls up the configuration and serves out to you the configuration instead of the delivered LPL. And I'm going to be talking a little bit more about that. So what you see here, you see the opening page to the repository where we can see the configuration in the last 14 days. If I wanted to actually go into all of the configurations, I could do that right here. I could click that view full log, and then I can see all of the configurations that I have. This is more or less the repository. So I can pull up all of my different types of configurations. A business class is that custom business table. A relationship joins joins two tables together, a key field, a field. So if I just wanted to pull up all of the just the user fields that I've created in the system, then I can pull that. The same way, if I wanted to clear out my search and then just pull up the menus that I have configured, then I can scroll down here and I can now search for the menus and then look for the item that I want. And notice even that I've for some reason that I have actually configured the repository itself. I can't remember why I did that, but you could pretty much configure anything, any screen. If you see it on screen, you can pretty much configure it in the system. So this is the repository. I'm going to go back home. Sometimes if you are the person who is in charge of reviewing the repository and making sure that everything is up to snuff, then yeah, looking at the activity over the last 14 days is it could be very important. One of the things that is also important when we start talking about change management. I'm going to talk about the change management module down here, or the items down here in just a moment, is understanding when something is an invalid configuration. Because what happens when you configure a form, which is equivalent to a screen, you are making a copy of that screen as of that date, as of that time. So when I change this menu item, I copied that as of that date and time. If Infor later comes back and makes a change to that, it is possible. It's not very likely, but it is possible that that it can invalidate your repository or your configuration. And so now, before, where we would just have to take a guess or review or have a process, one of the things as far as the change management process that is different moving forward is that the invalid configurations, they will automatically be on your home dashboard for your configuration console. That, for me, that's a winner. That is definitely a plus in the column. I can also see if anyone has overridden the configurations and then see what personalizations are. If you don't know exactly what that is, let me talk about that a little bit more. I don't like to enable personalizations for my clients. I strongly recommend not to do that. A personalization, when you give access to do so, allows people to customize, each and every person, the ability to customize their own screen. As a person who often has to support other people, the idea of someone calling me and saying, hey, can you explain to me why my screen doesn't look like what it's supposed to look like, when they have the expectations of that they've configured it to look the way that they want it to look, there's no possible way from an IT infrastructure standpoint that I can help them with that, because I don't know what you did to your screen to make you look like that. But some companies, if you feel like you want people to change the way their screens look and how they react to them, you can turn on personalizations. And if you do that, then you'll see all of the personalizations that are defined in the system. Before, it was kind of murky. You could find them. It wasn't very clear who had a personalization and why something wasn't working, particularly if someone's asked you to go and add a field to the screen and they keep insisting, no, it's not working. It's not working. Well, it probably would turn out that they had a configuration on that screen. But now you get to see there. So while you do have these over on the home page of the configuration console space, you do have these overviews. You also down here have the ability, if you go into basic access, to look at the repository in a menu kind of approach. So down here, you would have basic access, and then you would have the basic logic, which would be changes or changing actions, reporting cubes, adding the tables, adding fields, joining two tables. That's basic logic, right? And then you have the user interface where we have the menus, the pages, the lists, the forms. So they do break that out. So if I wanted to come up here to the business logic, as opposed to navigating from the home dashboard, I can now come to the fields here, and I can click on the fields that I have defined into the system. Once again, why is it important to have all of these fields defined in the system? I do suggest that you limit the use as much as you can, just from a change management standpoint, but also it is enabling you to use the system the way that you need to use the system. So if there's not a delivered field, feel free, as in this case, this client has created a lot of different fields, right? And added and made sure that they were reflecting their business practices. And this is how we can see who created it. We can see when they created it, so on and so on. Okay, so that is the repository. I'm going to go back home. I've talked about, so let's talk about the configuration piece. So let me go to console, see if this is where I want to be.
John, while you're doing that, we just had a comment from someone that says that this looks great, the new configuration utility, and they just had a question whether supply chain and financials has the same functionality, and I said yes, they can use configuration console.
You are absolutely right. This is just like it is in the Rich client. This is also just as applicable. While you see me a lot, because I do have a human resources background, so I speak often to that. I'm trying to branch out into those other pieces. I have done those other pieces. I just naturally gravitate back to that. But yeah, definitely, if I were, had a configuration that a set of configurations, and I'm going to build on that set of configurations that were applicable to supply chain management or finance, those would be here as well. So here, when I go under configuration, which was the old go to the start menu, the application, and then configure, now we go configuration console, and then I have the master listing as well. And then I can, once again, I can search through my business classes, and I can search either my business classes, or I can search my types once again. So if I wanted to just go out there and search my actions, I could do that. What actions do I have? I don't have any actions defined out there, right? Let's say if I wanted to have the employee business class, see what changes I've made to the employee business class. These are all of the configurations that I've made on the employee business class. So those are, once again, in order to create the configurations, it's a little bit different, but it is pretty much the same. Okay, so once again, I'm going to draw a distinction between the things that you tweak, which are delivered, and the things that are new. And there's also a difference between business logic and a user interface. User interface is a list, which is like a spreadsheet view that you see inside of the application. A form is like an action form. A page is where you have more than one item on, where you may have a list and you have an action, a lot of different things on a page. That's a page, right? And so this is where we see a configure an existing component, and then we can see add a new component. And then we see the things that exist above the application. So for example, menus and web applications, eventually security will be here as well. Okay,
Hey, John.
so yes.
Real quick, somebody's asking if they can use this now. Is this configuration console in Soho, is that GA'd already, or is that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And you may be asking, if it's not GA, why am I showing you? Because on the roadmap, if you are a client that is planning on moving very soon, or you have it in the works, this is the tool that you will be using. If you are an existing client that would like to see what we're doing here, you can reach out to your client services manager, your success manager rather, your CSM, and then see how you would go about enabling that, or you could schedule some time with us. That's a great way for us to set you up. Hey, if you want some information in the short shorter period until midsummer that you want to talk about how you can get more experience and exposure to this so that you can prepare for the changes, then I would ask that you reach out to Molly Velasco or Dave Thomas, who is here today, and then we can set up coffee with one of our consultants so that we can go over on how you can enable this and get that out there. But to answer the question more directly, N4's roadmap does have it on GA. Right now, there are a lot of clients. There's over 100 clients using this right now in both the test and the production environments. And so, yeah, you are able to use it, but there's some things that we have to go over with you first, right? You're going to want to bring this into your test environment, enable it there, get things down, and understand how this tool is different, because there are some differences that you need to know about before you start using it in a production, and you're going to see some of those in just a moment. Okay.
Thank you, John.
Anything? You're welcome. Anything else, Liz, on that front?
That was all.
Okay. Once again, if you have questions, you see other people doing it, shout it out to Liz. Liz will she'll interrupt me. She's very good at that, and we'll get that question answered. Okay. So so the way that we go about doing the configurations, it's pretty much the same as before, but I am going to tell you something now that you should really listen to. So I'm going to go to my master list. I often get the question, who should be the person or the group inside the HR organization or the organization that would do the configuration console? And my question up until recently has always been, well, if you have an HR technology, or if you have a business analyst who's very sharp, and they're very analytical, and they like to be challenged with technical things, then yeah, maybe it's appropriate that an HRIS or an HR technology department, that this could be an extension of what they do, especially what I call basic, moderate configurations. But the advanced, maybe as you get into more of the technical programming things, that maybe you would want to leave that to someone in an IT who has a programming background. When I open this up, I'm just going to open up a random configuration. One of the things you're going to notice is that I don't have a graphical user interface. If you've seen the tool before, you know that what it used to do is that it would open up pretty much a representation of the form, and that you could click on a particular field, or you could do some dragging and dropping. So this is the big item that I want you to hear today. And that is that in moving this direction, it is a fantastic tool. I love it. It is a big improvement over what was there, but it is going to employ LPL only. It will not have a graphical user interface. Now, I just clicked on edit this. In order to edit this, I do have to know landmark pattern language. So this gives me the opportunity to explain what landmark pattern language is. So I'm going to go down here to the bottom of the page, and I'm going to see the LPL viewer. This program is written, and it's a landmark. It's written in landmark, and the screens and the fields and everything that you see here, it is actually written in landmark pattern language. Landmark pattern language is a derivative of Java Beans, and it is a proprietary language that's owned by N4, and all of the screens that you see here. And so when any screen, any field from the employee or work assignment or vendor on the purchasing side, they all have something called a business class, and they're written in this LPL. So remember when I said that the way that the configurations work is that it doesn't change the underlying base LPL. It actually copies the base LPL, allows you to modify it, and then when someone calls that screen, it calls the overlay to that screen. So this is, for example, if I were changing something on the LPL, this is the delivered LPL on the employee tables and screens and forms that I'm changing. What I love about this is that you used to have to dig for this tool. So if I needed to understand how something was calculated for an employee or for some other type of payment calculation that's done maybe on the finance or on the purchasing side, it wasn't as exposed as it is over here. Over here, I can go to that code and I can actually look up exactly how something is calculated. And that just helps me because I have a lot of questions. People, for example, how is the service date calculated for employees? Well, when I was younger, I used to try to be a hotshot and I used to try to remember all of that stuff. I just don't have the need to do that anymore because my data dictionary is built into this tool so that I can get to that, right? I can see all of the list. I can see that are defined in the system. I can see all of the forms, the pages, the menus. I can actually see how Infor wrote those. That code is displayed to me. And it also gives me a roadmap of how I can write code to supplement or to configure what they're delivering to me, which is a very important point that I'm making, right? Because if I go back here to configuration and I go back to the master or to create, and I said, how or what, the new approach here is going to be that you will need to know how to write LPL in order to make configurations. How are you going to learn? Well, you could reach out to Bells and we could schedule some time with you, some training so that we can train you on landmark pattern language. There is documentation out on the knowledge base that you can get, but one of the indispensable tools that you're going to find is looking at this LPL viewer for examples of the way that something is written in the system so that you can replicate it there. For those of you who are moving from the rich client to this tool, then I think that you will probably find it a little easier. But if you're new, that brings me back to the point of who rightfully should own this tool. Previously, I said it might have been someone in HR technology or some other business analyst supporting maybe purchasing who can make changes to screens and add new fields. Now that it has gone into the direction, or it has gone in the direction of landmark pattern language changes only, I now am of the opinion that it's probably someone more more aligned with the information technology side than it is with the business side, because you will learn, you do need to learn how to code. I am going to show one more thing about that I really like. Now, you do have this ability just to flip a flag, but one of the things that I really like, because I am a coder, I'm a JavaScript coder, and I have certifications in different programming languages, and the ability to add a comment. Let me put this, to add a comment to explain why I made this change directly in the code is very valuable. Okay, so comments and being able to comment out your code and explain why the changes, and maybe even having something, you could do this, right? The change made, it's part of maybe a change management process. Change made on 4/21, 20, what date is this? 23/21 by John Quinn.
23rd.
Okay, I'm already 10 years ahead of where I am. Okay, and then if I wanted to do multi-lines, I could do it like that, right? Maybe it's the other way around. That's the rule of coding. If it doesn't work the first time, then try it a different way. Okay. Anyway, so that is there. Just be aware that if you do it in your current, if you are out there and you do flip the flag on allowing comments, once you do it in the current rich client, you will now need to only make your changes via LPL, landmark pattern language. You will not be able to use the graphical the GUI in order to make changes from that point forward on that configuration. So just be very careful if you do enable that. If you want to know how to enable that currently and you don't have this yet enabled, the configuration console module enabled within your test environments, then reach out once again to Molly, and Molly will get some time. Molly will reach out to me or to Liz or to one of our consultants, and we'll spend some time explaining how you can turn that on, where that flag is kept. Okay, so I've covered a lot of great information. There's two more things that I want to make sure that I get in, and I also want to make sure that I open it up for questions. But I want to talk about what really excited me about this product. And that's next. I want to talk about change management, and I definitely want to get back to the web services conversation because I think from a configuration, an outward-facing configuration and what needs to happen from there, that's a very important topic too. And a lot of you have been asking about the REST web services and how that works and how you can utilize that at your organization. So let me talk about change management. Okay, you will recall that what I said is that you're taking a copy when you modify a screen or you add a field or something to that nature. You can always go and compare against the base LPL. So if you didn't notice, there was a little tag up there. It says compare against LPL, right? So this is going to tell me exactly what changes I made. So if I did need to look at the changes that someone made, I can do that. And that's available on any configuration. The other thing is that unlike before, you do now have well, let me go to a different one. Let me go to master. And I want to pull up the change history so that you can see the change history that we may have made. This is a good one. Let's look at the change history that exists on the status history. How many times? Well, maybe not there. LPL history. So you can see when a configuration was changed. I do this all the time. I say, yeah, it wasn't me. I didn't do it. I don't know who did that. I don't know why it doesn't work anymore. Well, you know, I'm often called out on it because they said, well, that's very funny because on 325, this was the current state. This is what it was, right? But now this is why translation doesn't work because yeah, translatable. Yeah, you kind of remove that. And so the translation no longer works. So you can go back from a change management viewpoint and you can see where the changes were made, right? So you also see some of the security coming into play with some of these configurations giving access and you can manage the security class. You can see that through here. So you see some of that. I actually have security clearance, so that's going to appear for me. And then we can also better describe for change management purposes. This is a description of why of the use of this. Well, I'm not a great typist, obviously. Modification, right? I think that while it is a simple field or a simple thing to do, I think tagging the putting in a pretty thorough description is an important part of change management. So I encourage you to go out there now that it's more visible to put in descriptions. And one of the things that I'm encouraging, and Liz and I talked about this. We in our part of our implementation, we do what are called business design documents or business specifications. You may call them technical specifications, and we give them numbers when we do that so that when we work on a solution, because a solution may be a screen, maybe a user field, maybe an action, maybe a security, that we can lump them all together. That concept I'm going to bring more fully into focus when I talk more about the change management tools that have been put into place. So business design document, and 001 approved on such and such date, right? So just note that that could help you very much about how you go about your change management process. Now, those are things that you can do today. These are new things that you can do with this tool. So looking at the change management menu item, I can manage changes. Okay, so one of the things that you're going to see is something called tags, bundles, local snapshots, remote snapshots, and applied snapshots. I'm going to walk through these. I hope you are as excited about these things as I was when I saw those. Okay, so I am now with a client, a very sizable client. They are international. We brought the US up first, and there are 27 different locations in the US. Christopher's out there nodding his head because I know he was part of this part. You might have seen his name out there on some of those configurations. And now we have things that were migrated into production and they're out there, right? We don't want to touch those changes. And now we're doing another round of testing for our international group. our China locations, our China locations, Malaysia, a location in Mexico. And so how can we, without overriding all of the configurations that are out there, because we didn't touch those configurations, how can we manage that change management process, right? Well, now remember what I said in the opening part, that the change management process should not be burdensome, and it should not be overwhelming. Well, now we have tools in order to address that. The first thing that we do in the new world is that we can tag modifications that belong together. So if you had 4 user fields and 2 screens and 1 action that all belong part of the same business technical specification for a business solution, you can now tag all of those. And what is also great about this is that a configuration can be tagged in more or can be have more than 1 tag, because you may touch the terminate screen or the vendor screen for this configuration specification, but you also may tag it for this other specification. So a configuration can have multiple tags. And the way that it does, when you tag, there are tags that you create. And when you tag something, now in my example, I called the tag BS, Business Specification 0001 org fields. And all of the configurations that are related to the org fields, I've tagged those. Now, what I do from there, I use those in bundles. A bundle allows me to take a tag or multiple tags and create a bundle off of that, right? And I can now see all of those items together. So what does the bundle do for me? Well, remember, I'm going to go back to prior to now. I would have to export all of my configurations or manually build my configurations, or be very extremely careful about how I would get the configurations that I wanted out of the test system into production, right? Well, now I have a way of bundling these, and I create a snapshot. And when I create a snapshot, it creates a local snapshot. And then I'll tell you in just a second what I do with that local snapshot. Let's just take a moment for you to digest what I have gone over with tags and bundles. And Liz, let's see if there are any questions out there.
We don't have any right now.
Okay. Okay, well, you interrupt me and you just let me know.
I will.
If we do, okay? Okay,
Yep.
so going back over that just a little bit more in depth, when you have a set of configurations that belong together as a result of a business specification, you can tag those independent configurations. You can bundle them together. You can create a snapshot, and you can see that local snapshot. And then you can see the time and the date that you created that local snapshot. Once I am ready, I can then export that snapshot out of the system, and it will only contain the configuration console modifications that I have identified, that I've tagged. And then I can bring them into the system. I can now import that snapshot. So I'm in a test system, I'm in a train system now where there's no PII. And then I can export the information, and then I can import. I can go to this tool and I can import into the tenant I want to bring this into, right? So that's in a proper change management process. Let me go back here and just see something for just a moment. I'm going to go into my bundles. There is the ability to have approve off. So there's a field. I can't remember exactly where it is right now, but there is a field. Maybe it's on the local snapshots. Let me go here. I'm looking for a field. It is the approval field. I will find that and if you have any questions about the approval process, let us know, and we'll get that approval process out there. But you can approve it. So in other words, you can set up a process that it requires approval before it goes into production, or if you are in a implementation pattern, if you have a requirement where you develop and train, and then you say, okay, this is ready to move to our test environment where we're doing our integration testing, right? And then after it's tested there, it can then be migrated up to production. It's a way of having better approval levels and a change management process. Then once you are, once you bring in a snapshot, then you can see this applied snapshot. So you can see what, when, and how, who that the applied snapshots applied to that system, right? So this tool I really like a lot. This is a great tool. I am using it now. I am going to use it. I love it. Okay. All right, Liz, do we have any questions before I move on? Our time is slowly coming to the top of the hour. Okay. I am now.
We do not. We do
Okay.
not, John.
I'm going to move to a different part of the application. So here I am under the configuration console tool. I'm actually going to now start talking about the web services piece because that has been a question that some of you have had. The whole platform is web service enabled. Anything that I see here on the screen and any menu that I have, and whether I'm in the finance side or whether I'm on the HR side, whether I'm on the material side, all of this data can be exposed via web services. Meaning that if you wanted to and you didn't like the front end of this, you could actually create your whole entire web application for yourself. I'm not telling you to do this because I don't know anyone that would do this. And then you could consume all of those web services. So let me show you how you see what delivered web services are out there. There's something called, for those of you who have the appropriate security roles, there's something called, actually, let me do it on this one so I can show you how to switch. So you're used to seeing administrator, but are you used to seeing administration console? When you click on administration console, that takes you over to this menu item here where we can see some pretty high configurations of the system. We can see some of our security classes. This is where our spelling dictionary is housed. A lot of different things are some of our data translations, some of our security reports. But down here on the other menu item, there's something that is called applications and system links. When I follow that, there's this link here that says web services, public web services API. And when I click that open, I come to the public API documentation of a lot of different information about web services. There are the typical form list-based SOAP web services out there. So if you're more familiar with the WSDL, Web Service Definition Language, and the XML schemas and writing against the SOAP access protocol, then you're more than welcome to see there. We have a lot of questions that are around the REST protocol, and that is using JSON, which is the JavaScript object notation. I actually love it. I think everyone should be using it. And so I'm going to click on that to show you everything in the system, and it does not matter. And I can go Control F for vendor. Okay, so here's the vendor information. There's 33. Let's see. If you're on the material side, background check vendor, just you can scroll through here. But vendor is down here. If you wanted to pull a list of all of the vendors in the system, but you wanted to do that via a web service call right here, this is the vendor or a vendor group, then you can do that. A lot of our clients, or not, I won't say a lot, but some of our clients, Liz has worked with one client where they have chosen for the time being not to use the delivered candidate space to hire people because of some business requirements through the Department of Transportation. So they use web services to hire people to pass them directly into the system, as opposed to using talent acquisition or having to manually enter people. And so this gives you the information of how you can code and get that vendor. And you can go out there and you can explore. So once again, in order to get to that, you're going to go to Administration Console, you're going to go to Other Links, you're going to go to Application and System Links, and that's going to bring up the Public Web Services API. I know that I went through that rather quickly, as I have gone through the other material rather quickly, but I'm reminding you that we are recording that, and Molly is, she does send this out for you to review the information so that you can play it back at your own speed, okay? So don't worry about it if I was talking too quickly. Molly has you covered there, okay? The one thing that I also want to talk about going into the public web services is reports as a service. Okay, so here is a report that I wrote. So if I'm going to go up here, I wrote this on the HR side. Anytime that I write a report, it actually will appear as a web service as well. A lot of people who are even familiar with the web services access, they don't really know that it works that way. But N4 report as a service directory, what you are able to do, kind of show you this a little bit. I think I have just a couple of seconds to go over this of how you can create a report. So I can go over to my resources, pull up my resources. I'm not actually going to walk through the whole process of creating a report, but I just want to give you a general sense of where that menu item is so that you can see, well, how does that menu item get out there? So if I hit, once again, this is a system that has no PII. All information that you see on the screen is fictional characters. I feel like I'm, leading into crime scene investigators or something like that. Right. So down here, there's, if I wanted to create a report off of this listing, this is referred to as a listing. I can go to my dot menu and then go down here to my options, and then I can create a report. And that opens this up, and then I can add additional fields. If I don't like the fields here, I can remove fields if I want. Just go ahead and remove that. Like, I don't want that field on there, but I do want another field that isn't here. Then I can search for the field. It'll bring it up, and I can actually write reports. Now, I do say that this functionality is a lot better than the functionality that we had before. But once you create the report and you save it, and it will actually appear here. It's an automatic thing. Now, it's great if you want to access the report by going to my reports over where I did up here on my bar. But if you intend to write a report that you have to send to maybe a supply vendor, or that you have to send to maybe a benefits vendor, or maybe an awards or service award company, what you can do is that you can write a report, and you can give them the fields and only the fields that you want. And then you can give them this web service link right here that you see this up here, right there. You can give that to them. See that? And then they're able to just make that web service call right into their application. You don't have to transmit it. You don't have to go over the email. You don't have to expose things like that. It just automatically, as you write your report, it creates the web service. You give that to the person downstream that you want to give that to. And it works like magic. It's supposed to work like magic. It is using the Swagger UI. So you can, if you want more information about Swagger, you can Google Swagger. It's deeply integrated into this product. So I think that's a lot of good information. I would like to see people use that more. All right, we are down 7 minutes, and I am going to pause my presentation. I'm going to go back to my PowerPoint slide is what I'm going to do. So.
And we just had a comment from somebody that said reports as a service. Thank you.
Yes, very good. So if you do have further questions about anything that I've covered, once again, I did go, because it's a lot of material. It's exciting material. You may have a lot of questions. We are more than happy. Liz is about to talk about coffee sessions that we can set up with you. You just work with Molly or Dave, and we will make sure that we will schedule a session with you so that you can get a repeat, or to slow it down, or more information that we weren't able to cover, or something that is more specific to your areas of interest. So thank you very much. From my perspective, Liz, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, John, and thank you such for a great session. I mean, it was very informative, and I know a lot of people are digesting, a lot of what you said. They'll probably replay the recording back and be able to get a lot of helpful hints on what you went over. So coming next week at the April 30th sessions, we have the rebuild maintenance, where I actually will be talking about the rebuilding of the reporting relationships, the manager chart, and the actor organization unit relationships that are currently done dynamically in GHR if you have not set up the zero impact rebuilds, which is a new feature that came out, I think, in CU 34. Also next week at 1 o'clock, we will be hosting the S3 to GHR payroll migration lessons learned. We've had a couple implementations that Bells has done. And so we will be having two of our consultants going over S3 payroll to GHR payroll and what lessons were learned. And then we also have, John, if you want to change the slide. Thank you. We also have Coffee with Consultants, where we will actually do one-on-one consultation with you for 15 minutes free of charge on any questions you may have about the Infor system, whether it be human resources, supply chain, or financials. Just reach out to Molly. Her email address is down there. Or if you don't want to reach out to Molly, reach out to Dave or John or whoever, and we can get you in touch with a consultant to answer any of your questions. Do we have any other questions before we sign off? We have 4 minutes if anybody has any questions.
Jerome, I see you out there, by the way. I'm just looking at the list. Just shout out to Jerome. I see you there.
Yeah, we had great job. Thank you again from Joseph. So thank you, guys.
All right, I'm going to stop my presentation and we'll talk to you down the road. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.